our panelists. Um, Coming to you, Dr. Parik, with the rise of AI and digital technologies, what are the major mental health challenges that you have observed as a professional in this field, especially in young people? And can you please talk about how can schools and parents address these issues?
See, I think when you look at children or you look at education, you will also need to understand most innovations, most advances have their own evolution also. Right? I don't come from the school of thought anymore that this is good, this is bad. Right? I don't think that works anymore. Years back, if we would have thought about the harms of social media, is it good or bad? Right? There's no point. The point could be how can social media be better utilized and how can harms be mitigated the best? At best, that's what we can do. The question can't be should adolescents be using social media or not anymore. You can have as much conversations as adults as you want and stay away from reality. It doesn't change the fact that young people are there. Right? Now, same applies to AI. I'll put this in different contexts. I'll first start with mental. And I'll also start with, let's say, although I believe this is applicable globally, but surely for countries like ours, where there is a significant dearth of mental health experts. Now, if let's say 3 in 4 people who require mental health intervention don't seek help because of stigma, which we all know. Let's say even if a 20% rise happens, just a 20% rise in people who are seeking help, how will they get the experts when the experts don't exist? The match is not there. So when I see some of these conversations, even in my fraternity for that matter, would AI be a good thing, not good thing? The discussion should be, how can I, as a mental health professional, use AI so that I can increase the reach, ensure that more people are helped in the best possible manner that one can. And that approach is very important. If you ask me, I feel AI-enabled psychological first aid, AI-enabled basic guidance is going to be the way future of mental health is going to be shaped. Like it or not, that's going to happen. And I'd much rather have it happen with the involvement of all stakeholders so that the best possible solutions happen. And during that process, we will have a learning curve where we'll have some places where we do phenomenally good job, some places where we learn through mistakes. But that's science, that's evolution. Now, when you talk about what can be the problems, I mean, if you ask me, my biggest problem with most things that are easily accessible is I want young people to be creative, right? I want them to bring out their originality. I don't want them to have the opportunity to go to an AI platform and do a perfect homework. I want them to do an awful homework. I want them to make lots of mistakes, bring creativity, and color the sky maroon for all I care. I don't want them to give me a perfect answer every time. It kills uniqueness and creativity. I want them to write original books, original thought, make original music. I don't want them to cut, copy, paste, and all that stuff. I don't want them to do that. But the fact is, that is happening. But then, if you go back in time, you give young people online homework. Years back, you would have done that because you wanted them to experience how to work online. And then you realize that they were, all sorts of things happened from copy pasting to plagiarism and so on and so forth. And we worked a way around it. And I'm sure we'll work a way around this as well. The other aspect is anything which does not have a control, so as to say. And I hold this for social media platforms as well. I hold this for everyone. I hold this for adults as well. I mean, you can be an adult and you have a young person at home, and you may be completely out of your place and using language which is inappropriate, behavior which is inappropriate, and you're right there as a role model at home. And you are also going to cause as much harm that somebody on social may do, which is why we've been working on media literacy together, because that's the way. You don't tell them to switch off, you tell them how to utilize. Same applies to AI. When it comes to harms that can happen, we don't know. We will know. But while we develop anything and see its development happening in our ecosystem, we need to simultaneously empower ourselves, educate ourselves, and educate young people in the process. So today, what we tell them or what we learn may be completely different on in what will be available a couple of years down the lane, right? I was going through a presentation by somebody very interesting. I found it intriguing that they said if you record a video, we can make that video in any language that you want, in your voice, with your lip sync, and share it. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? That there are so many languages. My country, there are so many languages. I speak what, 2.5 language. So if people can hear something in their language, effective. But then the downside would be this video could also end up saying something that I may not understand because I don't understand the language and whatever faulty information goes. Now that's the benefit and harm right in front of you. I believe we should be open, be willing to learn, be willing to understand that there will be lots of rises and falls in this process, but be open to accept innovation. I have fundamentally believed you don't fight change, you shape change in a way that it works best for young people. And that's how I look at the mental health aspect of AI as the future. And I think it's here to stay, and it's going to be used by all of us like it or not.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parekh. Don't fight change, shape change. Please, I'm going to use this. It makes a lot of sense and it's very impactful. Shape the change that needs to happen. And so coming to you, Karuna, what do you think about what he said? And also considering your extensive experience in online safety, can you talk a little bit about policies and strategies that tech companies especially adopt to mitigate or, like he said, shape the change when it comes to AI-driven, if you want to call it harassment or bullying or harms in general?
Thanks so much, Jyoti. And I completely agree with what Dr. Parekh has said. I think these technologies are here. I think shutting them down is not the solution. It's about making sure that we are helping young people navigate these technologies in the right way. And there is so much new research coming out, which is really indicating that just going after social media or technology and putting them as the bad guy isn't the right approach, because it will actually do more harm in the long run, because then we'll panic and create solutions that actually won't be the right solutions to create. So I'm so grateful to hear Dr. Parekh start us off on that note. In terms of corporates, I think there's a lot we could unpack, but I want to leave 3 thoughts just as a conversation starter for us. I think first and foremost, when I joined Facebook, one of the posters that I used to love seeing on the walls of the company was, it said, people over pixels. And I think that's the fundamental approach that tech companies need to take. They need to remember that they are actually building technologies which are going to be used by people, and not focus on the tech so much, but focus on the human impact of those technologies while they're doing their jobs. So I think taking a safety first approach is fundamental. It's critical. It's important. They need to do that. And when we're talking about that, they also need to be thinking about what are the right policies they need to have in place. They need to think about the technology that they need to build to help people have, experiences that actually foster their well-being and not negatively impact them. But also, I think the biggest thing that companies struggle with, at least, when I see both on the outside when I was on the inside, is enforcement. I think enforcement is something that tech companies really struggle with, because even if you get it wrong 0.1% of the time, in terms of real numbers, there's a lot of harm that we talk about. So I think that's the first thing that I want to leave, which is, tech companies need to really remember that they're building for people at the end of the day. I think second thing is, all this negative conversation which is right now happening about Gen AI, people are panicking. That shouldn't stop tech companies from innovating and thinking about how these technologies can actually be used to actually further people's lives. So, years back when I was at Meta, one of the tools that I was proudest of working with engineering teams was a tool where if somebody saw that their friend was in distress or was, expressing, negative emotions or about to do something harmful to themselves, we could have bumped up resources to that person just using the power of technology, using the power of AI to even predict that this person might be considering doing something harmful. Can we bump up advice that experts have told us might help somebody who's in that situation? So what is the next generation in terms of tooling or technology that can be used? Dr. Parekh brings up the fact that we don't have the number of counselors that are actually needed on the ground. So I don't think technology can take the place of people and counselors and experts, but I do think that it can provide some interim support and help to people in those dire situations. So what is that next, generation technology that we could be looking at? And then third, I'm like a broken record in this one. I think tech companies have done a miserable job when it comes to fostering research that helps us better understand the way that people have used these technologies, what are their experiences, and we end up relying a lot on anecdotal evidence and anecdotal data, which makes a very skewed picture. So I think tech companies need to do a better job of working with academics, working with experts such as yourselves, to really unpack how these technologies are being used, how are they shaping people's lives, what more could we be doing in these spaces to foster people's well-being. Because right now, all this panic and all this hysteria, we're going to end up making some really bad calls, and we're going to impact children in a negative way. So I really hope that tech companies get over that holding of data, and sometimes that data doesn't exist, which is why they do that and they don't know how to explain it. But I hope that they open themselves up and sit with academics across the table and experts to really break down and give us a better insight into what's happening. I'm going to stop there because there's a lot more I could say, but I just wanted to start with these three thoughts.
Thanks, Karuna. I really, I mean, we all second your thoughts on especially the research and anecdotal evidence. That is something that CSR has also been crying hoarse about for a long time. And now coming to you, Laura. So Roblox has been a leader in promoting digital civility. I believe you guys coined the term of civility in the online environment. Could you share some successful initiatives or something interesting initiatives or key learnings that other platforms can also adopt to enhance online safety for children?
I will, but very briefly, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Parekh and to Karuna, because this makes my heart happy that these technologies are here. I think something we all need to bring it back to is technology can be abused, whatever it is. It's about people and about how people use it, which is the perfect segue to my job, which is to try to educate and empower. As Karuna mentioned, this kind of hysteria that's been built up about Gen AI particularly. Platforms couldn't exist without using algorithms. And I remember our British government rather embarrassingly one time saying, ban the algorithms. Like, well, if we did that, we wouldn't have safety on our platforms. What we need to do is understand how they work. We don't all have to be experts, but the media and things like that, they're driving this fear around it. And unfortunately, there are bad actors. Karuna and I have both worked in image-based abuse. We know we're seeing people making deep fakes and things like that. But there's also a lot of good out there. So just to pick up on Dr. Parekh's point, I'm really privileged that I'm involved in lots of kind of accelerator programs. And what we're seeing is this really positive use of using AI as a way of scaling these services, of being able to provide real in-the-moment support on platforms. Like Karuna said, we've kind of talked for so many years about this. How do we reach those people most at need in the moment they need it? We know they're not going to go to a website, to a safety center to look for a helpline and then reach out to that helpline. That's too many barriers, too many steps. What we need to do, as you said, is for the algorithms, yay for algorithms, to pick up this person's in distress and hey, there's somebody you can speak to right now. You just need to click this button. So there are some really fantastic examples of how AI is being used. Specifically, thank you for raising the civility project. I do have to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Jocelyn, who used to be at Microsoft many years ago. And she actually started something called the Civility Index, which was working with young people all over the world. She used to do it for Safer Internet Day every year. And she was trying to measure young people's well-being in online spaces, but she referred to it as civility. We actually asked her permission for me to take that as my job, and she's very proud that I took the mantle because she's moved on to Snap and does other things now. But yes, so civility for us is not about being nice. It is about resilience. It is about appropriate behavior in appropriate spaces, but also it's an opportunity for us to really build those skills that young people need to thrive in platforms and beyond. And we're not just talking about the children themselves, but it's about their whole community. So we want to work with their parents and caregivers, educators, law enforcement and policymakers to try to build everybody's knowledge, confidence and experience within all different platforms. This is much bigger than Roblox for us. So some of the things that we're really proud of, which many of you were involved in, so thank you again for your support. My manager, Tammy, who was going to be here, she's on holiday in Europe. Don't feel sorry for her. She had this crazy idea that online spaces could be more safe and civil than the real world in 5 to 10 years, and wanted to discuss with what we need to do. And everyone came. We opened the doors and we had experts from academia, from children's health, from mental health organizations, online safety. The regulators came and all our online safety partners. And we just really dug into, let's forget everything that we've done so far because it hasn't worked. We haven't moved the needle. We're stuck in this place where we're so reactive of kind of empowering kids and building these healthy communities. What haven't we tried? And so we looked at tech solutions, policy solutions, and education. That for me is still the one we're finding the hardest. How do we manage all the languages in India, for example? You know, is AI going to be some of the solution to that? It could be. These are things we need to test and experiment with. But we have written a white paper, and now and it's interesting talking to colleagues, particularly in other tech platforms, they're using these principles that we came up with, very top level, and now looking at how could I apply that in my platform. This is, something that we're sharing. The number one thing that came out of it, definitely have to get this out, was youth participation. So not just talking to kids, but actually getting them involved in product development, in policy development, listening to them. Most of us on this call have worked in child safety or online safety for our whole careers, many, many years between us. We know the things we have to do to keep people safe on a platform. But also there are things that young people, particularly teenagers, want support with that we might not understand yet. So unless we get them involved and do this kind of for youth by youth model, I think we're still a way off. And I'll be very brief, I know I'm taking a lot of time, another project that we've just done, which just came from us observing our community and really sort of looking at who makes up the Roblox community. We're a user-generated platform. It's all about creativity. It's all about creation and community and diversity. And one of the things that we've seen over and over is we have a very high neurodivergent population where kids, particularly who don't feel that they belong in the real world, maybe even non-verbal, don't have friends, they build these amazing communities around them within Roblox, and it's like their safe place. And we hear a lot of parents telling us how valuable that is. The flip side of that is there are real struggles for them as a family with excessive use, with perhaps, misunderstanding that some of their friends may not really be their friends. So we did a research project with one of our UK partners where we actually met with families, we met with teens, we met with their parents, and we really dug into what do online games mean for you? And so we'll be sharing some more of that, and maybe we can drop some stuff in the chat with you.
That would be great, Laura. If we can share some of those resources, we would love to look at that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Coming to you, Swati. So as an educator and the promoter of arts, do you think a cultural education, a contextual cultural education and arts can contribute to better mental health and resilience in the digital age?
Hello, everyone. Yes, wonderful to hear all the tech talk because I come in from a background of no tech. I have tried to keep myself really away from tech. And so at the wonderful age of 63, I still don't use glasses and I don't use a lot of things because we were taught as artists and dancers that if you stare at the computer a lot and you have a lot of bright light on you, it is going to damage a lot of the things you do. So I took that to heart, and my own guru, Dr. Sonal Mansingh, doesn't wear glasses at 81, and all of us do read without them. So that's one of the things. But art for me has been such a powerful tool to help in creating an environment of positivity, which I feel is the one thing that is required in any age, be it AI or a past platform of people. Always, when the internet came, everyone was worried and they said, oh my God, children are going to be damaged. Parents were supervising it. There were helicopter parents, watching what they were doing. But it is the field of art, whether it is poetry, music, theater, dance, filmmaking, writing, animation, this is the one tool that it is a safe space where there's no right or wrong. It's abstract. It is self proclamatory from within your consciousness, where you're saying, I'm in a safe space. There is no grading here. I'm okay to be able to express my deep innermost thoughts and have everyone think and say, this is interesting. What were you thinking, say, when you made this door, or you made this frog, or you made this red and black painting? And there's so many aspects of it, which is why to encourage schools and young children to go for art therapy, art classes, self-express using hands, using expressions, abhinay that we do, to say what are the navarasas. Some people find it easy to articulate and speak. Some don't. So nonverbal communication is very, very important through the different mediums of art. And when children know that this is a safe space, I can make friends within this space. I can discuss and not feel bad about myself, where somebody is trolling me or bullying me, or cyber space is telling me that you're not good enough, or your body shape is not good enough, or you're not positive enough, or using the term lightly, oh, you're mentally challenged, or mentally loosely retardation of the mind. You are educating them through art that you are your own analyst. You are okay the way you are, express yourself. And when you express yourself with confidence, you are reaching out to everyone saying, I have positivity. If I always joke that there's a lot of humor with art. You can say, if you don't like me, you don't have good taste. I have good taste, so I like me. First is, I like me. And I often tell people, if you don't like me, it's your taste that's not good. Everyone doesn't like caviar, but that's just a joke. I always put it that every person must be taught that mental health, we have young people suffering from it because of pressures of whether it's parental, peer group, it is society, it is even social media, which is saying, well, what have you achieved? Your brothers achieved this, your sisters achieved this, your cousins achieved this constant pressure that what have you achieved and can I see a certificate? I mean, if I jokingly even open, say, Princeton or Stanford or Harvard, they'll be saying, come take a crash 3-week course and I'll teach you AI, and then you'll have a certificate. And then you'll become a medical expert. I don't want to be a medical expert or I want to go to a doctor who's really knows something. And I don't want a cut-paste analysis of me, because today everybody has become very analytical about everyone based on a cut-paste society. So I think that to teach children, as I think everyone here on the panel spoke, is that you are in the real world. There is social media. Go on it. Put a time limit on yourself, how much you should do, what it is that you are trying to gain from it. If you start feeling a sense of panic that I'm not going on this holiday, or I don't have this, discipline yourself, that turn it off. What is it I want? Who am I? And the beauty of all of that is that art always relieves stress. Art is such a great stress but dancers like me to go on platforms and speak about political issues, anything that upsets me. If Roe versus Wade upset me, I wrote in Hindi and English entire poetry and I performed it in Delhi, set it to music, and I was in a safe space where I could really say whatever I thought without anyone saying I'm being political, because I'm the artist. I'm expressing my deep innermost thoughts. So I feel that when I work with young girls and children and young boys, it's knowing that I may not have to agree, but it's okay to disagree. I don't have to be the one to say that you're good and you're bad. And as long as you don't harm anyone and you have empathy and you have a space to allow everyone to think freely, to grow, and to say, well, you may have a point of view. I am stuck in some other thought zone, but there is an opportunity to grow and to learn. And that is what art really brings, an integration of self-consciousness, self-esteem, positivity, thought, and the desire to be having empathy with the peer group and all around. So on that note, I think theater films should also have a responsibility when they make films and they showcase. They must stop using, especially Bollywood, certain terminology or to put people in boxes, because even as a young girl, I never understood why, and I was appalled. My mother, of course, never allowed me to watch films, but if I ever, like, I think my first movie was at the age of 16 was Bobby, and that too a friend took me to see it with her mother. And I kept saying, why do they touch the woman's pallu? How dare they? How dare they tug at somebody's dupatta? And how dare she saying, no, why are they chasing? That's harassment. And today it's taken so many years later for people to understand that. So art has a responsibility to tell people that this is not okay and this is okay.
Yes.
So on that note, I will let the rest of you take it up. And art is very important, so everyone should indulge in it. It is
Thanks.
our candy.
Thanks, Swati. Thanks for taking us offline for a few moments. And
Thank you.
I hope you think we have good taste. We like you and we love you. Thank you so much.
Well, I think all of you are terrific, and I got such a wonderful. I in fact had Tammy on my show to speak on my podcast, and she was wonderful. So I've learned a lot from Roblox, and and the first time they told me about Roblox, I was like, "Is that roadblocks?" And then I said, "Oh no, no, no." So one always learns.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Swati. Thanks for that. And then, Dr. Anjana, I would just come to you. Let's go back online again and talk a little bit about policy and how we can strengthen frameworks, since we're all here from different cohorts working on the same thing. But how can global frameworks be strengthened to protect women and children in this age?
Thank you, Jyoti. What has been said so far really brings a very comprehensive understanding of this panel about how we should look at AI and its harm, and also, of course, the benefits. There is no doubt that for me, if I visualize it, we are in a kind of swimming pool. It's summer, so I'm thinking of a swimming pool where you are tech universe is like that pool where a lot of people have been thrown in intentionally, unintentionally, but they are there, whether they know how to swim or not, they are there and they will be there. So that's one thing is, I feel that there is no going back on it. So I really like Dr. Samir Parekh saying that, so now let's all work towards how to mend it. And then Karuna's whole point about, how we should look at the tech company's own responsibility. And as Swati said, where you feel safe. So that's the fundamental thing, that you, whatever is your algorithm, whatever is your pixel, whatever is your, you need to make people who are in this, space to make yourself feel safe. And also, of course, there is a bigger role to the other stakeholder that I feel we need to emphasize, is the one who regulates this pool, who makes the rules and regulations for this pool. That you will wear such clothes, you will take protection, take a ring when the child is very small. You should not let the child swim on her or his own. Chances are that she may learn or he may learn or may drown. So that's something which is extremely important. And that role I see as a policy maker and someone who has been working and advising on various kinds of policies in my own country. I feel that, that's where a role of a very comprehensive legal framework is needed. And our current laws often can't keep up with the rapid technological advancements. We did make an IT law and it's far way behind now when we are reviewing it and when they're talking about it. Hopefully, when we elect a new government by 4th of June, we should be able to, get this going swiftly, fast enough to be able to create those policies and laws which are more protecting more, and also that they don't leave any gaps that offenders can exploit. At the moment, we do see that a lot of these things are happening because there are so many gaps in our laws and policies. And also, of course, we must advocate. I also feel that this universe is so large that unless there are more global, effort or inter dialogues, and also there is some kind of a global agreement we have to come together to on these policies and laws, because each country is pushing. EU is getting its own direction. US is getting its own direction. We are kind of all the time shouting at top of our voices that you are not looking at our context. So it has to be tailored to the local context. Cultural, social, and economic factors will have to be factored in, and they all influence the manifestation and impact on this kind of violence that we see online. So, and also, so this is something which I would emphasize, that we do need it. We need it urgently. We need it not only at the national level, laws and policies, but also at the with some kind of a global consensus and agreement, which we need to do that. And that's a very unique challenge, because the tech companies have come together to form some kind of alliance, but then they are not really inclusive of the other kinds of voices, because basically who the users, the people who have been pushed into this pool without their understanding. Now, uh, that's where I consider the one of the ideas that I think Karuna said, or maybe perhaps Dr. Parikh also said, is about education. Education and awareness. So that role becomes a part and parcel of the responsibility. If you produce something and push it out into the market, and a lot of people are using it, and that's in some sense helping people, but in some sense also harming people. So you really have to create that kind of awareness, and especially I'm saying in the context of our work, Center for Social Research work, working with school children, parents, and also with the the youth, the whole youth ambassador program that we rolled out. So I feel that a lot of it is needs to be also invested in education and awareness. A huge amount of effort needs to be done in research. There is absolutely no doubt that there is not enough investment, neither by the policy makers, that is the governments and institutions, but also there is not enough effort by the the tech companies to come up with these research. If you are saying Oculus, or you are saying, okay, look at the way the whole universe will change for you the moment you will wear these Ray-Ban glasses or whatever. I mean, this huge amount of development technology. So you need to know the impact it will make. As Dr. Parikh also, is a very renowned psychiatrist, said that we will get to know the impact. We know much less at the moment. So why not move into the direction, and every new product should be, I'm sure there is a very good, I mean, having been part of this whole scene, that there is good research going on to understand, but I think we need to do, and especially tech companies need to do more. And finally, support services. I feel that once NCII has been tremendously helpful whenever we have flagged the issues. Around 200 cases we flagged last year. And even now we are sending, Jyoti and team is sending to them. But, when I think of such an institution which has the kind of reach, which can really immediately intervene, which can really help in terms of activating the side of the tech companies, then I don't see anything in my region. Absolutely none, nothing. And there is a safety commissioner's office in Australia, but there is nothing which is in our region. I feel that these are the 4-5 points I wanted to add to, but perhaps every one of them is a kind of repetition, because all of you have made those points.
Thank you, Dr. Anjana. Laura, I could see you wanted to add something to what Dr. Anjana was saying.
Oh, Ranjana, everything you said just resonated with me so painfully. I was involved, as you were, and I believe Karina as well, in discussions around the Online Safety Act, which has just recently come into effect in the United Kingdom. I was very lucky that the people who started this process from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport actually came to my offices with our dear friend David Wright, who you all know, who is part of Stop NCII. And they said, you know, we're thinking about doing a consultation into online safety. What do you think? And that was early in 2016. That's how long it took to get the Online Safety Act in place. I was involved right from the beginning, sitting there as a support service NGO. Then when I moved to the tech industry and I was still involved, the conversations were very, very different. And it felt, I called it out a little bit because I felt it was very unfair on the tech industry that the government and some of the people who were behind the bill were perhaps keeping some information back, and it became a them and us, which was really unhelpful. Also, it took so long to get it into effect. I mean, I'm really happy that we have this bill. I'm really positive it will affect great change. But they just focused on social media and the very big tech companies. Meanwhile, there's me working for a medium to small at the time games company. Now we're a little bit bigger. But they actually hadn't considered the video games industry at all. So they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll tag that on. But they tried to sort of squeeze it in with the same regulation that they were already looking at. Then we had some huge world events in Christchurch and other places. So they went, oh, we haven't actually thought about terrorism and radicalization. Okay, well, we'll tag that on as well. And it just felt like they kept adding things and not really thinking through how one of those might impact something else. I'm sure we're going to have to see so many do-overs of elements. I'm happy to share, we've started our supervision with Ofcom, who are the UK regulators. We have a great relationship, and thankfully I work for an organisation who are already very risk averse. We've already been putting these things in place. So hopefully there won't be any big scares for us. But this whole point of us talking about AI and the growth of Gen AI is not in the bill. It is not in the Act. We're having to set up a completely separate new regulation all about AI. So, you know, Ranjana, I think we're going to be whack-a-mole playing this, you know, trying to get regulation to fit all these different things. But we're being really short-sighted. As you say, we're looking at one country, one region, one issue, and we're not looking holistically at the whole impact. You know, whether we had bills that were more around harm as opposed to specific elements of harm, maybe that might be a better thing. So thank you. You speak from my heart.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, I think it's always like we're chasing a ghost when it comes to policy on the tech front. We don't envision much, or we're unable to most of the time. Thank you for being so patient, Dr. Parekh. I want to come back to you. We want to learn as much as possible. Time is very short. I just, you know, as a way of facilitating this discussion between the panel, like Laura has already commented on what Dr. Ranjana has said, I would like to ask you, what do you think of what Laura had said earlier around the hysteria that involves the Gen AI, and, you know, everyone is panicking right now. There are tech policy solutions. There are solutions as in education and empowering of the users and stakeholders. Also about listening to the kids and using their voice in the policy that we're all trying to form. I would like to get your perspective on this.
It is complex, to be honest. Yes, everyone is a stakeholder, including children. And like it or not, there is the factor of what age are we talking about and how do we involve them, right? So let's say if you are to make a decision for a 6-month kid, so you will make a decision for the 6-month kid, right? If the gastroenterologist says that this 6-month kid needs to be given a syrup for stomachache, you will give it. So one will always have to understand that aspect. At the same time, I just feel that there is a complexity to this entire aspect in terms of, first of all, we will need to understand that sometimes I feel that we've got the idea of freedom of expression not always in the best way, right? Freedom of expression does not come without responsibility. You just can't say what you want to say without owning up and being responsible about the impact of what you say, right? So you can't just say that I am, in the name of comedy, I am okay using profanities, and a 13-year-old thinks that that profanity is cool, and that 13-year-old uses that profanity in front of a 7-year-old sibling, and the 7-year-old sibling that's severely reprimanded for using that language, which started from some comedian not knowing how to speak where, with what filters, in front of what audience. There is a way to look at these things. In my opinion, what needs to happen is a lot of this starts also from platforms. I have been a very firm believer of self-censorship. You will never need somebody else to censor you if you are being responsible. But you stop being responsible, then there needs to be peer-reviewed censorship, but there has to be something or the other. As a medical expert, I can't just print an article about what I think is right and wrong. There are peer-reviewed journals that peers will go through that and say, yes, are we willing to say that what you are saying is science? There is evidence. I don't think platforms can take away their responsibility quotient out of the context. We will have to understand that. We'll also have to understand that that may not be the need of a platform. That's literacy, right? You will need to understand what does one want out of what they do. If their need and their responsibility are mismatched, and his need is driving what they are doing, responsibility will be the casualty. Simple as that. And if self-censorship and peer review is not going to bring a sense of responsibility to ensure that harm, especially to young people, can be mitigated, policy will have to happen. In a complex aspect, which is digital, policy will have to be global. If it is not global, it won't work. So these are very complex issues. And my one honest reflection, all that was being said, and I have to, especially when I was talking about AI, and I'm very glad, Swatiji, you just spoke about art. I'd much rather have a young person experimenting with colors and music and movement. And that will give me a lot of hope for the future and the creativity, the true solution that creativity can bring in life. And as a mental health professional, we have an art therapy program. We have trained art therapists who work not just with young people, they work with across age group in clinical population, in mental health and non-mental health conditions, from cancer care to neurology and post-neurosurgery, in ICU care. I mean, there is a lot of role. It's just that we need to have the right balance. The balance which is about our creative, unique expression, and the balance that science brings in when we talk about generative AI. I don't panic per se with what technology can do. I typically panic about what humans can do, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the human that's driving what is happening. As you age, like I am, probably the oldest here, right? Because artists don't age. Mental health professionals surely get tired very, very soon, right? The fact is that we disappoint ourselves by the way we are. There is so much good that can happen with each advance that science brings in, but somehow the bad outnumbers the good because of the user being the human. And that to me,
Dr. Parikh, thank you. I'm just going to interject the
Please.
point you made.
Please.
is that these days I've started feeling like a therapist because I teach at UNLV at the Kola School of Art. And in the middle of dancing and telling everyone to express, a lot of the young women stood up and said that they had been suicidal before that program and how the art therapy had changed their mind. And I was so stunned and shocked that I actually was speechless, which is difficult, to get me to be speechless, because I saw and it moved me that art really helped these young women who are going out to make a difference at the University of Nevada. They were the first generation of immigrants who were college goers, and that this therapy, called the Warrior Queen Project program, which I run, made a difference where they each one stood up, and one stood, then a second and a third, and it was for me a shock that art can allow you to weep, allow you to open up, and allow you to even tell yourself, oh my God, I didn't realize I have the ability to self-heal. And that is so important, that we are always going to need, even with AI, real humans to talk, real art, real touch, real feel. You can't just be in love with a robot or someone who's trolling you and feel bad. I'll say, who are you? You're a troll. I don't really care. I know who I am. And so it's about smelling that rose, feeling the Grishma, the heat of Delhi, or the rain of Goa. It's till you feel the colors, the passion, the smell, the taste, the Pancha Mahabhuta. We are always going to be human first. And only then can AI survive, actually, because we as humans have to grow. And once we have grown, we can control and dictate to AI what we need. This is where we need you to help us. This is where you keep quiet. This is not your turf. These are the formats and rules. And this is where we help society. This is where you don't. And this is where you're a terrorist and out. So
Swati,
you're right, we need policy.
I want to give here an example that when we were in the Karuna, I think I want Karuna to say something here. In the Meta board meeting, Safety Advisory Council now, no more board, we were discussing, and the team from Australia, the members from Australia, Karuna knows them, they brought in a very interesting, example that how the chatbot is really there to help a lot of people who are not able to express their problems in terms of whatever mental health that they are suffering. They're not, because of stigmas, there is a lot of pressure on them. A lot of people don't support them. I mean, there is not a natural instinct in us, especially in Indian society, where we are holding hand of someone who's suffering. It's really not, it doesn't come in us. We may say it, we have been talking a lot about it. So I feel that, in that situation, the chatbot coming as a solution provider for a lot of such discussions. I don't know how Dr. Parikh will react to it, but Karna can explain that a little more. Similarly, these kind of systems can be brought in, and the thing that you're talking about, of course, there is no alternative to touch, feel, love, hug. There is nothing human touch cannot be replaced. And there's no question at any stage. We can see that. But certainly this technology can come in and enhance. A lot of children who play these games, just to mention, because about Roblox, I think the children who are playing, they're learning many things which they give us the surprises when they talk about certain things that they already know. And they know because they're playing those games. And of course, we as the parents will have to monitor it. We have to be part. I mean, I play with my granddaughter some of Roblox games, and I know that how it is making them also very human. They're also, there is a poor girl and they want to adopt her, and they want to give her everything that they have. So a lot of those values are also being inculcated, which in the rush and madness of our society today, we are not able to do it as parents. A lot of parents are not able to give time to children to be able to do that. But then these games will have to be consciously created. These chat box will have to be created. These solutions will have to be found through use of this technology. Okay, Karuna,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah,
I just want to very quickly jump.
I'm sure, Karuna, platforms are our favorite pinata. Please add. Please
So I
add
think
to, yeah.
no, absolutely. I think two things. I think one is that, especially issues like non-consensual intimate image abuse, if you are on the victim side, like, reaching out to somebody, you're so intimidated by in that situation because you feel like you've done something wrong by sharing your intimate image because of all the stigma and all the taboo which is attached to it. I think, reaching out to an anonymous chatbot in that moment, to just get some immediate help and support. So I don't think long term, I think long term people are, they need that human connection, and they nothing beats a counselor at your organization or at UK Revenge Porn Helpline who can walk a person, and step by step help them heal and also help them get back control. But I do think in that moment of that crisis, sometimes these technologies can step in and play that immediate help role, which is absolutely critical. I think that's one. I think on the side of technology, building empathy, building sympathy, I think there's a huge amount of work that can be done there. And one experiment I remember, and tech companies hate the word experiment because they don't want you to think that they're experimenting on you, but you have to try out different things and see what works and what resonates and what doesn't resonate and how do people respond to it. And I remember in early days, Instagram had done this one brilliant thing where it tried to stop somebody when they felt that somebody was typing something which might be harmful or hurtful to the other person. So they'd give you a pop-up and tell you, hey, what you're about to say might actually not be taken the way that you intend for it to be taken, or may cause the other person pain or trauma. Are you really sure you want to go ahead and post this or share this? So I think tech platforms have a great amount that they can do, leveraging the power of AI, leveraging the power of technology to really get ahead of some of that harmful behavior. And I think we need to be really clear. There's some content that is clearly illegal. It needs to be reported to law enforcement. It should not be anywhere shared on these platforms. But then there's that harmful content which may not be illegal but may cause somebody pain or hurt or maybe inappropriate or make somebody uncomfortable. I think that's where AI and can also play a big role in trying to educate people and trying to build that empathy and sensitivity, which sometimes people in the rush of the real world may not get that moment for learning otherwise. So I definitely think that there is room for technology to do more there.
Thanks, Karuna. We are actually at the end of the session. I wish this could go on for another hour. Laura, I know you have another meeting and we've already made you a little late. But any closing remarks that anyone would like to add? We actually did keep some time for a Q&A. I would request the audience to leave their questions in the chat, and we will make sure your questions reach the panelists at a later time. We will email the panelists the questions. But I would just like to ask the panel to give us anything as a closing for the session.
I would, sorry,
Laura,
I've got to jump off. So
you go first.
thank you so much. But yes, please do follow up with questions. I'm sure you guys will connect us. I'd love to carry on this conversation because it's really invigorating. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm going to jump off. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Jyoti, I just want to jump in and say, and I know Laura talked about some of the, ways that, policymakers are approaching, looking at, legislating or, how do they get ahead of some of these harms on these spaces. And Dr. Kumari talked about the need for taking a global approach. One of the things that really worries me is the harms that we're seeing and the impact that we're seeing of these technologies. They're the same things which we were seeing in the offline world many years back when we were talking about some of the crimes and some of the harms. And policymakers, policy can only go so far to send the message that this is wrong and you should not be doing it, but there has to be some kind of value education, which is where arts and which is where some of that human connection is really important and critical. I remember one of my first assemblies when I went to college, when I went to Stevens, Dr. Wilson, who was the then principal, turned around and he gave the example of a parent whose child trips over a rock, and the parent tells a rock, bad rock, versus another parent who tells the child, hey, be careful next time when you're walking, you tripped on something. So some of that I think also needs to come in, education, some of getting people to understand that their actions actually have a negative impact on someone else's life, building that empathy that Dr. Kumari talked about. I think we need to do a lot more because policy can set a very high level, tone of what's right, what's wrong. Policymakers are constantly playing catch up. We've talked about the whack-a-mole game. We've talked about the global nature of these platforms, but then we need to talk about, the human impact of these and how do we, get ahead of some of what we're seeing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Definitely, Karuna. Even at CSR, the three things that we've been working on very, very passionately is education, awareness generation, capacity building of the user themselves. That is also that we want the other stakeholders to invest in, like the governments and the platform. This is where the conversation or the direction that it needs to take. But yes, Dr. Parekh, if you would like to add to this.
I think responsibility has to be the key. Everybody needs to find their responsibility. I do feel globally policies need to be there, but if you can't implement a policy, then just wasting hours and printing it on paper is a waste of time and paper both. So anything that can't be implemented it's just a waste of time. But I do feel platforms need to do. I feel it's possible that platforms, if they want to survive, then they will need to understand that you will not be able to safeguard your own survival if your damage continues to happen, whether you do research or not, whether you do preventive techniques or not, the damage will come one day out of the surface and hit you into oblivion. That is how life is. So rather than letting that happen, you be open to evaluate the impact, both positive and negative. Go tom positive, no problems, but understand the negative. Have the right kind of external, unbiased people to also advise you, because groupthink is real. And when you live in a well with common goals and needs and targets, you may miss out on the red flags that life will keep showing you. So you need to have that approach so that 5 years down the lane, 10 years down the lane, you need to be able to think, will people still want you the way they want you today? Or would they feel you've done so damage, it's time to delete you? And that's going to happen. Be very clear about it. The only choice you have is you'll never delete it because you were doing managing both sides, your interests, targets, all the other things that numbers do, but you were doing that with a sense of responsibility because you were aware. Denial is not a luxury that civilizations can afford.
I think well said.
Thanks.
Well said.
And Swati, you always make us more human with your art. Would you like to leave us with some closing remarks at this point?
Yes, I think for everyone, you all have, some have children, grandchildren, you will realize that they look at our faces and see our emotions and how we evoke those emotions. And we say, I'm happy. During COVID, when the face was covered, people had a lot of mental issues because there's no expression. And we speak culturally as well. Every culture is different, but we do speak with our hands, we speak with our eyes, our eyebrows. But if we even speak with the colors, we speak with the way we dress, every part of us must, and I say must because otherwise we're going to become a depressed world that is dependent on AI to tell us what to do. No, we have to tell AI what to do. They don't lead us. I decide. If I want AI, I say, tell me I'm writing a paper on this. What is it? Then I say, no, you know less than me. Let me find out more and let me direct it. I am the director of my destiny. No tech is going to be the director of my destiny.
Definitely. Thanks, Swati. That's powerful. Dr. Anjana, if you would like to close the session for us, please.
Well, I think just to summarize, I think we need to still start. Also, companies should invest in understanding local communities and their unique challenges. Then only they can co-create the interventions along with the local community users and basically the people. So I think that's extremely important here. And also to fight against gender-based violence, AI enabled, especially deep fake and other things that we saw even during these elections and other things. It's extremely important to have a multifaceted approach where we must have a comprehensive legal frameworks, increase funding support for different kinds of services and support services, robust awareness campaigns, and international cooperation and locally tailored solutions. That's what my summed up version of what I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anjana, especially for bringing up the cultural context. That is another thing that we work on, steering the platforms towards a more culturally contextual policy. Thank you so much, all of you, for all your time. We're already 10 minutes, 11 minutes over, and thank you for your support. This was extremely insightful. We are going to prepare one pager on what we learned today and share it with everyone. And also there's going to be some questions, especially I can see some of our student ambassadors are very interested in that. I'm going to email individually to all of you. And
there
we,
are questions in the chat
Yeah.
box. So
Yes.
please, record it before it gets lost.
Yes.
Because
So
then-
I will be sharing that with the panel, and I would request you to please send us a reply. And again, thank you so much. We're extremely grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.